didn't really have a great deal compared to a lot of the vendors to push or promote.
Yes.
There was basically a decorator table.
Yeah.
I thought there was a tablecloth, but there may not have even been a tablecloth.
No, it was a jumper.
A laptop with a demo on?
No.
No. Screenshots of anything?
No.
No. Roller banner?
No.
Tin of roses?
I don't even think there was that. Do you agree with me that in a sort of fully cloud environment, the tenant is the new server?
I would, yeah.
So then I'll ask, well, are you doing that for all of your tenants?
Some of the best MSPs that are working with you, what are the things they get right in their approach to working with Inforcer?
There's definitely a few different approaches. We've always had very, very good network group pricing, and I always agreed that when I had the money, I would spend it with you.
That is the proper power of community, isn't it? Good afternoon, Will.
Good afternoon.
So we're here at the first network group meetup of 2026 in Bristol. Only a couple of hour drive for me, so it's quite nice. I'm quite happy with that. And we're going to have a bit of a chat today about your relationship with network group, from your perspective and from Inforcer's perspective. Want to just tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Will Connor. I'm one of the co-founders of Inforcer. And we built Inforcer specifically for MSPs, and specifically to help MSPs to scale their Microsoft practice. Essentially, one of the biggest challenges that we were trying to solve was helping MSPs to manage multiple tenants. So delivering Microsoft security policies in things like Intune, Defender, conditional access. First of all, just get visibility, like who has got what state is their tenant in to start with. And once you've got that information, decide how you get them to where they need to be. And that could be by deploying policies. It could be by actually just saying this is okay not to be deployed. Yeah. But ultimately just giving MSPs a place where they can scale and deliver Microsoft security services to all of their tenants.
I was smiling partway through there because you're almost reminding me of the journey we've kind of been through and the pain points we had that Inforcer ultimately solved for us as a business. So jumping back to when we first met, because I both enjoy the story and somewhat regret this story for the way it's painted me. I first bumped into you at a couple of industry events, and you didn't really have a great deal compared to a lot of the vendors to push or promote.
Yes.
I'll go as far as to say I think there was basically a decorator table.
Yeah.
I thought there was a tablecloth, but there may not have even been a tablecloth.
No, it was a jumper.
Okay, and a laptop with a demo on?
No.
No. Screenshots of anything?
No.
No. Roller banner?
No.
Tin of roses?
I don't even think there was that.
There was nothing. The point I'm making is you guys knew you were obviously onto something early days, knew that you were solving a problem and were working on building it whilst obviously getting out there and connecting with the MSPs to get feedback, or just get mocked, frankly, by people who just took delight and go, where's all the sweets and the swag? But obviously we're in a very different position now, so please forget everything I said to you back then. So you've touched a little bit on the problem you were trying to solve, and obviously, you know, where we are now, it is very much a cloud-first environment for people. But I still feel, regardless of MSP size and sometimes of maturity, there's a massive difference between the way some MSPs manage their cloud and some don't, compared to, say, how well they would have done it back in the day of servers and domains and things.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it every day at the moment. And in fact, if you go to our website, the main sort of tagline on the site now is, for today's MSP, the tenant is a new server. And I've been having this conversation a lot recently with MSPs, and I'll say, do you agree with me that in a sort of fully cloud environment, the tenant is the new server for you? It's where the data, it's where the devices, where the identities, it's where your applications, it's the focal point of the business. And generally the answer is yes. Would you agree with that?
I would, yeah.
And then I would ask...
I'll jump in when I don't agree, don't worry.
Okay.
I will come straight in when you're wrong.
So then I'll ask is, okay, in that context, would you ever have had a server that isn't patched and isn't monitored?
Not what I'm going to admit to on a podcast, but no, in an ideal world, no.
So then I'll ask, well, are you doing that for all of your tenants?
Yeah.
And often, if they're not using a tool like ours, they're not, because it's not native in Microsoft. There isn't that proactive monitoring. There isn't the ability to track policy drift across all tenants for all policies. And then I'm like, well, if you agree with me that the tenant isn't the new server, then you probably need to put Inforcer on your tenants to start monitoring, backing up, and pushing out your sort of proactive updates.
And I suppose that's a very nice comparison, is the RMM element of the remote monitoring management aspect of servers. And if you think of the servers and the amount that went into them, right, there's a server, it's in a cabinet, it's locked, it's secured, it's in a server room, it's air-conned, it's keypad, it's this. You would build physical security around the physical asset where it mattered. And you kind of put it all together and you'd lock it all away. And then, certainly the early adopters to Office 365 as was, and that movement, there would be an element, we can just pivot to this and it takes care of itself. And I think that was a big mistake a lot of MSPs made.
100%.
They were so hyped with it's off to the cloud and I haven't got to worry about Exchange data stores corrupting and this happening and AD issues. But there was a hole left behind because people didn't realize there was a management to do. And I think a lot of MSPs fell foul of that.
I think people positioned it at the time as you're going to save money. We're not even going to have to. We're not going to have to charge you that server management
all that
fee
CapEx
anymore.
has gone. Yeah, you can have the room back.
Yeah.
You've got another office.
Literally, and so and you mentioned it there as well with some of the things you had to do around the server, and sort of one layer down for us is okay. If the tenant's a new server, your identity in Microsoft. That's your perimeter. That's what would have been the firewall in that server room, right? It's that's your other bit of kit you really need. It needs to be probably the foundation for every security decision you make, because that identity now is so important, because it's not just connecting people through the Microsoft identity into the tenant with all that nice data that's in there you want to protect, but it's also connected to all your SaaS apps through SSO. So if they get hold of your identity, even if you've got MFA in place, if they get hold of your token, then all of that, it's almost like the keys to your kingdom are now unlocked if you've not really locked down that identity and then start to connect it to the other areas of the
There's a nice analogy that I think most MSPs will have seen, which is the whole castle and moat element, isn't it? Once they're in, they're in. And I think the identity piece, it looks very easy, but I think probably where I feel that when I hear the bottlenecks that MSPs have is, I don't think many would probably disagree with all that identity point. I think that makes sense. But it's going away and taking the time to translate that and explain that to the client to justify there's work we need to do here.
Yeah, often it's impactful as well.
Yeah.
It's going to change,
do it right.
Potentially change the way that they work, because now, everyone's got to have a corporate machine potentially that can tie into those conditional access policies, and everyone's got to be, using at least Authenticator instead of the text or whatever it may be. There's all these
On that
changes.
point, I'll tell you where I think Inforcer lets MSPs trip up. It's such a powerful tool, but it's so versatile to use. People don't think to put a value on what it's doing for you. So if we all talk about now about value-based outcomes as opposed to the cost of the product to help me do it. If you look at the reporting you can do, or the level of security enhancement you can do, or the extra value you can drive out of a better Microsoft SKU with P1, P2, etc. People don't think to make sure the client understands what they're doing there. When we're tech-led MSPs, it's a tool, and I do this, and it's great because it's really quick and it does X, Y, Z. That doesn't mean it's not providing really tangible value to the client. So it's making sure you translate that. They're not going to get a better word processor or a newer this or an AI that, but they are getting better security. And it's that's hidden until it's not hidden. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we've added in the new assessment engine as well, where you can do your Copilot readiness, you can do your sort of CIS assessments, but also you can build your own, so that MSPs can start taking that value in terms of either we haven't done it yet because you're a new customer and this is how far away you are from our standard, and we're going to show you that journey over time. I know you talked about using our sort of prospecting audit quite a lot in the early stages to say, look, this is how rubbish your tenant is and we're going to improve it. But also taking that step further where you can then continuously assess a tenant, show the customer, and even if some of it's maybe too technical or maybe they don't quite understand everything, they understand red or green. And if you've turned them from red to green, that's usually a good sign. So we obviously have added a lot more assessments to actually start to drive more of that visibility to end users, as well as into your service team, so that you guys can also track it more effectively.
And I think going back to that server room analogy, the cloud constantly evolves. So when it's a really simple analogy, but I suppose when you built a server room and it was like Fort Knox, it didn't really change. New threats didn't necessarily realistically come along that change it, but the Microsoft tenant is constantly evolving. You need to improve the way you're building conditional access policies. You need to mitigate token theft. You need to there's new functionality coming in that you need to put and propagate through all your tenants. So there is we call ourselves managed service providers, and I very often refer to, define what the management is you actually do. And I think what I like, particularly with Inforcer, I'm a numbers guy. I like a dashboard. I like a pretty dashboard that is green and healthy with 100% or whatever it needs to be. So I'm a stickler for trying to get our alignment to exactly where it needs to be. We've actually just moved one of our techs into a completely proactive role now of compliance and automation, focusing on building automations in the business and focusing on the compliance aspect. How do you see some of the best MSPs that are working with you? What are the things they get right in their approach to working with Inforcer for their tenants?
So, I mean, there's definitely a few different approaches. I would say, first of all, not overcomplicating where they need to get to, because as you've just said, things change all the time in Microsoft, and sometimes, depending on the maturity of the MSP when it comes to Microsoft, they might not have a baseline. You guys had a baseline when you guys came on, so for you it was easy. We're going to bang our baseline into Inforcer, we're going to audit every tenant, and we're going to get them to where it needs to be.
Just quickly on that, and I used to proudly tell you that when you only had the table. Of course, the pushback was, which bless you never did, the pushback was, and is that baseline of yours flawlessly pushed out everywhere, Ian, with complete visibility? Well, I don't know about that, but I do know we have at least one tenant that looks glorious, which is a test tenant, not even a living tenant. So that was the problem I had with my perfect baseline.
Exactly. So for you guys, it's somewhat easier. You could put it in there and just start going at it and auditing and deploying the things you can deploy without contacting the customer. But then you get into that final stage where I recommend having tiers, or phases, let's say. So you can push out maybe phase 1, 2, and 3 without contacting the customer. But by the time you get to the 4th phase, it's probably impossible not to speak at least to someone in that organization. But that's also where sometimes the challenge comes with MSPs who they don't have a baseline yet. This is new for some people. They've just been maybe deploying some of the Microsoft defaults and they want to go further. And so in Inforcer, we'll provide you with baselines, but sometimes it can be overwhelming. Like in our CIS approved baseline, there's over 200 policies, and that's often...
We often refer to it. We still have our own kind of thing, but we're like, what are Inforcer doing in theirs? Let's go and have a quick poke under the bonnet at that one, and we mix and match with what we think is the right combination.
Yeah, exactly. And so it just depends on the internal expertise in Microsoft, I think, as to the best approach. But because since we first started coming to NG with really no platform, of course a lot's changed, but back then it was really just a policy deployment tool with policy deployment. We've obviously evolved significantly to being more of a platform to manage Microsoft. So from day one now, you're able to assess tenants, which you weren't able to do before. So you can just straight away, before you even deployed a policy, you can assess against CIS, or you can assess for Copilot readiness, or you can build your own assessments and go and run them. You can also manage all your users and your security groups. So you can start to do more day-to-day admin. I can onboard and enter a user, I can offboard a user, I can reset a password without having to dive into the Entra portals.
Which was something I was pushing you guys hard for.
Which it was, yes. And there's a lot more coming around there. And then it's about figuring out what's realistic to get all of your customers to, or to get a subset of your customers towards. And I think that phased approach then comes in a lot easier, because you can say, especially now we have the somewhat sort of customized baselines where you can take a full tenant, you can slice and dice it, which was also driven hugely by the members of this group, by the way, for us to build that feature. And it means you can get a customer to 100% at phase 1 very, very easily without having loads of deviations.
And arguably that first 100% of phase 1 is actually the strongest ROI in security shift. That really does move the basics, doesn't it? And I think I think it's one of the mistakes we perhaps made in the early days. I know what we'll do. We've got our baseline. We'll make sure it's absolutely flawless. We'll crank that Microsoft Secure Score through the roof, so literally nothing works. And then we will try and deploy it to everybody and benchmark everybody on their line. Well, I won't even go into that. But yes, I did get into quite a bit of hot water when I got fed up one day. Something wasn't happening. I was like, what's this man policy? I'm sick of this not being done. That did not go down well at my end. So, and of course, with all the nice auditing features, everybody knew that it was my logon that did it. I no longer have a logon, I can't do it. But I think that's a really key point, is to get everybody to a standard. Even if it's a modest standard, standardization is probably one of the things that's served my MSP best, is everybody running in the same way. The same stack, maybe different layers, but the same base stack, and that standardization. So when I've spoke to people about it, I'm like, yeah, but I've got this, that, and the other. They're like, you're trying to do too much. Exactly. Get to here, do that this quarter, this half year, and then get to there. And quite an interesting one is we'll onboard somebody, and when we're onboarding somebody net new, we try and get them straight to the absolute top of the phase, because now's the disruptive time. We got permission to do what we like. What the ProServe guys who go back into Inforcer, I'll see them go, hang on a minute. that tenant that was flawless 6 weeks ago is out of alignment. I'm like, because it's a constantly evolving thing. We've changed the baseline, and we need to, and it's on Josh now to go and to catch that up. But that just shows how much it changes versus the legacy days of build a server, forget about a server.
Well, I looked at the 365 roadmap recently, and for all licenses, in fairness, so all 365 licenses, there's currently 900 features in development.
900.
And it's just insane that then you guys can filter that down to the business premium just for security, and maybe I think it was about 50 updates had been released to Enter ID, Intune, Defender for Business, Defender for Office in the last 12 months.
Right.
So out of them 50, you've got to decide what makes sense.
The Defender stuff is coming on at an incredible rate, isn't it? Gone are the days of the Microsoft AV, the Microsoft antivirus stuff you don't touch. The modern Microsoft EDR stuff and all the Defender functionality really is getting up there with some of the best products.
100%. I mean, Microsoft are out developing, outspending in development every other vendor in the space, which is why they're now sat, and if you sort of look at the Gartner quadrants and things like that, they're always in the top right now for endpoint protection. So for the Defender suite, they're up there. They're now one of the best. They've just re-released the endpoint management one, so kind of like RMMs. Right. Again, Intune is at the top right hand side. Up there is them, and I think Ninja One in the top right.
Good, that's what I use.
So, but the reason for that is they're spending literally, I think it was 20 billion in R&D over 5 years. Wow. Like that's more than some of their competitors make in revenue in that period of time. So it's just insane. But then the challenge is, how do you guys as MSPs, how do you then filter that down to the things you should care about, the things you should deploy, and then actually go and push them out to your customer base, essentially? And it's something that, like, from the very beginning when we came into the network group, because we started with no product, and we opened up an early adopter program, and we had people using our platform with no UI, and in the back end it would be me doing the work.
When you say no UI, it was all just command line? I mean, what?
Well, so basically you would have a website page that you would go to, inforcer.com/portal or something like that.
Yeah.
So you would go there, and there would be 3 big buttons. Okay. It was a HubSpot page that we built ourselves. One said backup, one said deploy, and one said restore.
Right. Okay.
You would then click on that, it would take you to a form. That form was free text, and you would say, I want a copy from this tenant which I have enrolled. So we did still have an enterprise app. So we would come, actually, in the early days, we would come to your office and do we would actually add them with a script in PowerShell ourselves.
I did not know about this.
Yeah. So, Chris from ProDrive, so ProDrive, they were the first ever customer of ours. They had us into their office. We actually ran through, and we got them to all of the stuff we needed into an Excel. We ran it through PowerShell, and it onboarded an enterprise app onto all their tenants. This is how we did all of our first, probably our first 40 onboardings before we had a UI. So we would come to your office, we would do it in person with you, get the enterprise app on, and then we would have this form, which was basically a ticketing system, where we had a 15-minute SLA, where basically you would say, I want to copy these policy types from this tenant to these 5 tenants. And we would have 15 minutes to use our back end, which we had a front end to that we didn't want other people to use.
Right.
We would then run the PowerShell in the back end within 15 minutes and deploy those policies, which was still valuable for people because
of course. It's much quicker.
Saving an Intune deployment went from 5 days to 15 minutes or quicker if you caught us.
Never let anybody say that these SaaS companies that look like an overnight success didn't do their graft in the early days. It reminds me of how my son thinks cash machine works. He thinks there's a man in there passing pound notes.
Very
it's effectively where you were at and where you started.
Literally, and we did that for quite a lot of the members in the group who came on board in the first sort of 6 months. So between January 2023, which is when ProDrive came on board, to October 2023, which is when we launched the first version of UI, everybody who came on, which was pretty much just NG members, and then a couple of random US MSPs that somehow found our website and bought into it. And so for the US ones, we actually had to say to them, look, if it's out of UK hours, give us a bit of grace. And if you need us to do something, if you could let us know the day before, we'll be online late for you. If you need it doing it at a certain time, tell us and we'll do it. So there were sometimes nights where me or Rory, one of the other founders, were up at midnight deploying policies for an American MSP that was part of this early adopter cohort.
Yeah.
But the key thing was, and still is, we've always developed from the outside in, because we know that there's a lot of products out there that say they're for MSPs, or they say that they've got dedicated roadmap for MSPs, but actually none of the features, the feature requests go into a black hole on a form somewhere.
Oh, we all know about those. There was plenty of those in the industry.
And we just wanted to be different. So we wanted to involve MSPs from the very, very beginning. And the network group have been sort of a constant in that. They've always
How did you know of the network group? I'm not familiar with your sort of background into network group. If you want to go there quickly.
When we were really still developing the platform, so before we were even ready to do that version,
before you even had that jumper that you put on the table,
literally before that, we were just testing the waters, speaking to MSPs, like, is this even worth us spending money on? Because we've already, got some friends and family who've put a bit in to help us get off the ground, so we hope it is. And we truly believed it was a niche that there was a problem that needed fixing in the MSP space, which was Microsoft make amazing enterprise technology. They don't make it for MSPs. And so many MSPs, especially off the back of COVID, were delivering all of these cloud-based solutions and then struggling to manage it at scale. So we were certain that this was a thing that people needed to do. We've all, myself and also Jamie, our CEO, one of my co-founders, he was in the MSP space for a long time at Autotask. I was at ConnectWise. So we've seen the rise of
the understanding is
RMM and MSPs. So anyway, I flew out to a conference in Amsterdam earlier in the year in 2022 while we were just in the build. And I just bumped into Chris, just didn't know him before. We started talking. I was there just to try and talk to people and see, are we barking up the wrong tree here? So I just was buying tickets to different events and just turning up and talking to MSPs, probably just being that annoying guy at the bar who hasn't got a booth to talk to you at and just sort of parks up. And
this guy's got a pipe dream. He seems to think he's going to help us manage all of our Microsoft tenants.
So I started talking to Chris and he said, fortunately, I've got our main Intune guy with me, which we don't always have. I'm going to go and get him and I'm going to ask him if this is a good idea. So he brought James over and James was like, this would save me so much of my day-to-day. I just can't tell you how much time, because they follow the sort of true methods, sort of the standardized, everybody's standardized across their business in terms of the stack. And Intune was part of that and all the policies. So he was doing that manually and with some scripts. He's like, well, if I could just do that with a tool, it would just would change the way we deliver that to our customers within Microsoft. So they were like, whenever there's a version of this, we're your first tester, let us know, which they were true to their word on. And then what I didn't realize was happening was Chris had gone off to speak to Dave Tulip, who was also there, and said, there's a guy here, not got a product, might have a product at some point. If he does, and it does what it says it's going to do, the network group guys are probably going to care.
Right.
Tulip comes over to me and he says that basically, I've heard this, it sounds pretty cool.
Yep.
Have you heard of the network group? I said, yeah, I've heard of the network group because I used to come when I was at ConnectWise, but we haven't got a product yet, we've got no money. He said, well, why don't you come as a guest? We've got Twickenham coming up. It's an awards dinner. You can come, you can see everything. You can get this, the biggest one of the year. It'll be great fun. And also, if you want to try and pick up some early adopters, we'll support you, and there's no cost to you coming along. Just come and see what it's about. And so that's why I only had a trestle table, because it was 2 weeks before the event. There was no other spaces. We also didn't have any, I don't think we had time to get a banner printed. So I just turned up with the only merch I had, which was my jumper, and put that over the table. So that's why we were at that event. And then sort of since then, we've sort of grown with the group as well. So, for the next couple of events, actually, I continued to come as a guest. So we didn't have a proper pitch spot. We got to do at the odd talk where we could sort of try and bring in early adopters. Then we started coming in at the lowest level of investment, because just we didn't have the money. And now this year we're the top level of sponsorship. So we've grown through it. I always promised this, and I'm happy to say this on record, that the network group was such an integral part of our business growth. Dave and the team gave us a chance in that moment when he didn't really have to. No one else had. And we won't sort of ever forget that, because it gave us our opportunity to get our first set of customers that helped us ultimately build our platform. Yeah. So we've always had very, very good network group pricing. That's a fact. It's the best group pricing in the world. It always will be. And I always agreed that when I had the money, I would spend it with you. And so that's also why now we are at the top level of sponsorship.
I love that. I didn't know any of that, and I know quite a bit about Inforcer. I know reasonable about it. No, I did not know any of that, and I was just thinking that is the proper power of community, isn't it? I mean, you turned up to the events, you bumped into Chris, met Dave. That obviously worked out well for you. The relationship's been there ever since. That's fantastic. I don't think many members would probably know that. So
no,
it's good.
Probably
it's
not.
Good to see that it works both ways.
100%.
And how good for Network Group to know that Network Group helps, SaaS products as important as yours built for MSPs. We're actually part of the story for that. So that's a real nice feeling.
We've gone in that time from, let's say, from that first event I came to at Twickenham, which was, I believe it was sometime in Q4 2022.
Okay, before my time, I wasn't at Twickenham.
Okay, so 2022 that was, we had no customers. We now have over 1,000 MSPs using our platform, and the Network Group made up the first sort of 40 or 50 of those, and all of them are still using the platform today, and fully involved in, our business and being part of our community and part of our journey.
And just touching on where you are today, you mentioned obviously Chris bringing over his Intune guy, James, talking about Intune. So Intune for MSPs was a big thing in 2025. Just for those who didn't catch that, do you want to fill us in on that a bit?
And do you know what?
That's impressive.
It was easily missed, actually, which was a shame. But so Intune for MSPs is a Microsoft initiative. They launched it the back end, maybe October sort of time in 2025. And it was actually quite a pivotal shift in the way that Microsoft want to and recognize that they haven't been really supporting the MSPs, the MSP space as a whole. And it was mainly around multi-tenancy. And instead of sort of trying to do it themselves, what they decided to do was, we're going to partner with, to begin with, just 2 vendors out of the whole space that we believe can best serve as a conduit between Microsoft and the MSPs, and ultimately they back us to best solve the multi-tenant challenge for Microsoft. So
pretty nice feather in your cap, I'd say. That's pretty, bear in mind, we did start with a decorating table with nothing else. That's a pretty nice milestone.
And I think at the beginning of the year, we'd agreed as a board that we'd be happy with a blog from Microsoft. So, Intune for MSPs has really allowed us to...
It's good to have goals.
It's allowed us to just have a seat at the table with them to talk about the challenges that MSPs have with delivering Microsoft, whether it's because of the multi-tenant challenge or whether it's because of education or whether it's because of the licensing struggles. There's so many things that MSPs do struggle with, and we're working both with MSPs and with Microsoft to try and bridge that gap. So we're running enablement sessions with Microsoft around the world. We have been putting together a group. In fact, you came along to one of our sessions with one of the most senior people at Intune globally to come and listen to you about what they should change to make Intune more MSP friendly. And we facilitated that and brought in our partners. And it's just allowed us to get closer to our partners because they feel heard by Microsoft potentially for the first time ever.
It was a pretty surreal experience sitting there with the guy from Intune, and he told us his position within Microsoft and who he reported to, and it was pretty awestruck. And then he's making notes from me on what works, doesn't work, pain points within Intune, and you guys are there you've got him for the day, keep going. Fantastic.
We've spoken to MSPs about it, and they're a bit somewhat jaded, I think, by sometimes this, just not even just Microsoft, but vendor relations and everything. And they're like, oh, it's all marketing, isn't it? Nothing's going to come of it. And sometimes I tell them, well, we've had a group of 12 MSPs sat down with one of the most senior product guys at Intune to tell them what it is you need. That, it doesn't happen all the time, but actually for us going forward, those are going to be regular events. We've done a few online since then with the same team, and they are so open to listening to MSPs, and our job now is to hold them to account and make sure that the things you said actually come to fruition, but also to continue to do that, to expand it, to get more MSPs involved, and to drive. For us, the ultimate goal is, of course, more MSPs deliver more things within Microsoft because they have a bigger requirement for using Inforcer. And Microsoft, of course, if an MSP, in theory, I would like to say, if an MSP using Inforcer is better equipped to deliver more within Microsoft, then they win as well because you're going to sell more Microsoft licenses.
And I'll vouch for the MSP in the triangle. The MSP gets to do it at scale with standardisation with a partner that is working directly with Microsoft. So if everybody steps up to the table, it is a power play of 3, and the clients are served better. The benefit to Microsoft, me doing business premium and Entra correct is a benefit to Microsoft, because it's, you know, if it's done right, it's not Microsoft get the bad press for bad implementation, wrong SKUs, wrong whatever. So I can see the synergies there. So what does the future hold? You guys have achieved some pretty amazing stuff. What can you tell us that's coming?
Well,
or what do you think's coming in our industry, perhaps, if you want to come off the roadmap a little bit?
No, there's a couple of things that I can talk about there first, but there's also, I mean, there's an elephant in the room that hasn't even been mentioned yet, which is AI, which of course we can get onto.
Do my best to avoid it, but we'll save that till the end.
There's, look, I think we've been known as, because it's where we came from, as a policy management tool, you know, and sometimes that puts people off because maybe they don't do that many policies. You know, they do services around Microsoft, but
you only need one policy, don't you?
they're not using that many policies. So for us, we want to become a platform. We want to be the platform. We want to be the only platform an MSP needs to deliver Microsoft-focused services, focus mainly on Microsoft 365. But we want to help MSPs to scale those services. So, of course, we're going to keep doing way more of what we do really well today. More policies, more depth, you know, improving the core platform, of course, because when we've done quite a few sort of global client advisory boards recently, the number one thing that people tell us to do, and we list all these amazing things we could do, the number one voted for is keep doing the good stuff you do, but do more of it.
And I'll tell you why that is because it's too many vendors, without just chucking you in that vendor, but too many vendors are looking for the next big thing, and they haven't, they're onto something. Please don't abandon this for the next kick up. So it's really good to hear that
So I can assure you,
you've got one eye on carrying that on, because we see it all 100%. The time. I've used different tools in the industry, not, you know, sometimes quoting platforms and things like that, but they go off on a tangent. I'm like, yeah, but this has never been quite as good as it was going to be, or you seem to have left this behind. So
exactly.
I think that will reassure MSPs.
For the future, we're definitely going to do more of what we do well. That's like guarantee. We're also going to be looking at other things that we can help MSPs with inside Microsoft. So, you know, it could be things like managing your applications and your patches at scale through Intune. That's definitely an area that we're looking at. We're working with our partners to see if that's valuable to them. Would that be valuable to you?
It would. And I know it was a big talking point. Probably it's a whole podcast on its own, but it was a big talking point of where do RMMs sit in the future with Intune evolving the way it is. But
exactly. So that's definitely an area for us. Building out more and more on the assessment and the sort of how we can enable MSPs to sell more as well. That is a big area of focus for us. So we're actually, probably by the time this goes out, we'll have already launched.
It's going out today, mate.
The assessment engine from inside Inforcer as its own product.
Yeah.
So you can start just bringing in a tenant just to assess it. And you can also do that for prospects then as well with the full assessment engine. So Copilot readiness, which is obviously critical to what we were about to talk about anyway around AI. And for us, we just want to make sure that if you guys are trying to sell it, and really probably more importantly, if your customers want to buy something and it relates to Microsoft and you guys need to sell a service around it, we want to be able to enable you to deliver that. That's our goal. Yeah. And AI is definitely part of that story. And for me, there's obviously a lot of talk in the industry right now about, do you need to just sack off your MSP and become a managed intelligence provider? And, you know, but actually for me, I think, especially in the short to medium term, I'm more of a realist. I think AI is one of the biggest opportunities that MSPs have to deliver and grow new revenue streams over the next few years, like 100%. I actually saw some stats this week from Omdia, previously Canalys. I think it was 12.5% is the expected growth in cybersecurity spend this year, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't got a problem with that.
36% is the expected growth in AI spend for end users. On top of that, out of all the end users they surveyed, 49% of them are only going to partner for their AI work that they do, especially around agents. So the majority of businesses want to use partners because they don't want to do it in-house because it's too difficult. So this is such a huge opportunity.
We're the natural people to solve that problem. And I think sometimes MSPs are falling over their feet to figure out what to do. And I think where you guys have, and you and I have spoke about this before, but I think one of the things that you guys do is that, as you touched on, it's that conduit. There's always been a bridge between the Microsoft product that the world knows, and may love, may not love, but the product that they consume en masse for businesses, SMEs, the MSPs have always had something in the middle. So whether it was Windows updates, we barely use Windows software update services. We went down the RMM route. There's always been that platform that sits in the middle that really enables us to do it properly. So put the RMMs aside, the legacy on-prem agent RMMs, Inforcer really sits there. So it's there for the modern work level of stuff, shall we say, the entry level of stuff now. So the natural assumption from me is that you will continue to expand wider through the Azure stack and fill those gaps. I think I've hopefully put loads of word in your mouth there to make you to commit to something.
Yeah, I mean, like we do believe that an MSP doesn't need right now to know the answer to every question about AI, for example. Because nobody does. Microsoft don't, Nvidia don't, Pax8 don't, we don't. Why? Nobody does right now, but I think that's okay. And I think the important thing for us, and that's why we released our Copilot readiness assessment, is about starting the journey. It's almost about having a story to talk to your customers about. It's about when they come to you and ask you, oh, what is it? Like, how do I use AI? Because I'm like, people don't know. Like, especially your typical end user. I think about like my mum, for example, who runs a business, pretty computer illiterate, is going to see AI in the news everywhere because it's impossible not to see. She's going to go to her IT provider at some point and say, so should I be using AI? Yeah. And you have to have a story of where they start and how they get there. And there is a journey. If you even just think about Copilot itself, you've got the free version, you've got the version that connects to your applications, you've got like the Copilot chat embedded in all the applications, you've got agents, but you've got different types of agents, you've got the ones that exist in the studio area.
And that's assuming that you've gone down that Microsoft route. If we don't capture people and are able to service it at scale down a Copilot, Azure Foundry, Copilot Studio, whatever it might be, people will start to go down the shadow AI and it will drift off the MSP space.
Well,
so we need the tools and the training and the marketing to help us keep it where it can be contained and it's safe and it's relevant to their environment.
It also makes the most sense because it lives within the tenant.
Yeah.
And that's the readiness aspect is, well, hey, hang on, let's just do an assessment first. Let's see where you are when it comes to security. Yeah. Data governance is such a huge piece now. It's actually, I actually think in the immediate term, data governance is one of the biggest opportunities for MSPs. It's the data layer, it's SharePoint. Like what most people, when they did that switch over to tenants, is they just dumped everything from a file server into a SharePoint site. Yeah. And now they've got to deal with all of that. And that's a great opportunity for whoever wants to do that.
Well, we've all had access to DLP policies, and most MSPs aren't pushing DLP as a standard, but it's in there with the SKU. You've got a version of it.
It's a great place to start when it comes to readiness. So it's again about the basics. It's about getting those things in place. And for us, we definitely have an eye on, in terms of going back to your what does the future hold, how can we also enable MSPs to build and scale Copilot related practices and services that they can manage at scale, and that they can, build additional revenue streams on top of the Copilot license, because obviously everybody knows the margin you're getting on that is
and that's just not a business plan. You can't plan a strategy around shifting a SKU as many as you like, and we work very hard to be managed service providers,
which is what MSPs have done forever, right? That's the whole point of selling those wraparounds. And so we want to definitely in the very near future help MSPs to go on that journey as well.
Yeah.
But we are super realists. Like, we are aware that today's AI is the worst AI you're ever going to use. And we're also aware that there are so many known unknowns. Yeah, so if we can help MSPs go on that journey, while we're also going on the same journey, we'll continue the partnership that we've had from the very beginning, which is we also didn't really know what we were doing. Really, when we brought on our first customer in ProDrive, we did really, but we didn't know what the future held really then. And we've come along the journey with all of our partners, and that's what we intend to continue to do.
Fantastic. Look, I've really enjoyed that, Will. Look forward to seeing you at various events through the year, and I'm excited to see what these big reveals are for 2026 with Inforcer. Thanks very much.
Thank you.